There are a lot of things that can be said about Ewan McGregor's character from Birds of Prey, but the one at the forefront of my mind is, where does this guy buy his suits? Seriously, how many people can pull off a velvet suit? But I'm not here today to think about the exquisite wardrobe of Roman Sionis. Instead, I'm going to be taking a closer look at the Black Mask and talking about how he became the snappy dresser/crime lord we saw during Birds of Prey. As you can probably guess, this backstory is going to get messy. It's no secret that the criminals of Gotham City aren't Batman's biggest fans for obvious reasons. Having your carefully thought-out plan ruined by a guy dressed up as a bat does seem pretty demoralizing. But even before he came face-to-face with the Dark Knight, Roman Sionis had a major beef with Bruce Wayne himself. You can probably imagine just how happy of a childhood Roman had, considering that as an adult he commits crimes wearing a spooky black mask. But I'll fill you in anyway. He grew up incredibly wealthy with parents that could afford to give him the world, but couldn't afford to pay him even the smallest bit of attention. They were obsessed with their standing in society, and therefore Roman was expected to be absolutely perfect at all times. He was dragged around to formal parties and commanded to associate with other kids with obscenely rich parents. Kids like a little Bruce Wayne. Oh, and did I mention that he was literally dropped on his head when he was young? I'm not entirely sure if that's all to blame for how he grew up, but it probably didn't help matters. Even though his parents were obsessed with their place in society, they actually despised most of their associates. They hated the Waynes in particular, but would never reveal their true feelings to Thomas and Martha. Roman, however, was privy to his parents' true feelings and came to hate the fact that it was like they were always wearing masks in public. Unsurprisingly, they also disapproved of Roman's girlfriend, Cersei, which really didn't contribute to any kind of family harmony. Then one day, Roman's parents perished in an incredibly suspicious fire. Some people surely considered it a tragedy, but Roman definitely was not one of them. Mostly because he was the one who said it. Come on, you had to have guessed that one. Roman was eager to come into the family business and was too impatient to wait for his parents to pass away from natural causes. You'll soon see that luck isn't exactly his strong suit, but he was fortunate to get away with this particular crime since the fire was deemed an accident. Not only was he free of his parents, but he inherited the Janus Cosmetics Corporation and its associated fortune. But this wasn't happily ever after for our pal Roman. Instead of kicking back and relaxing, he promptly ran the company into the ground, which led to a buyout from none other than Wayne Industries. Even though Roman resented his parents, he was furious about the loss of what he viewed as his legacy and decided to get revenge on Bruce Wayne. And that's when things got weird, as in even by comic book standards it's a little much. Roman decided to attack the employees of Wayne Industries, but he had to put together the right outfit first. And I'm not talking about fancy suits. Instead, Roman really put a lot of focus on making the perfect mask for the occasion. Which does make sense. A mask is a perfect way to conceal your identity when you're committing crimes. No, I'm not speaking from experience here. I read a lot of comic books. Anyway, it was now time for Roman to put on a literal mask, much like the metaphorical ones he accused his parents of wearing while they were still alive. And he decided to carve it out of his father's coffin because, yikes. Because he's nuts. That's the only explanation I've got. Maybe former psychiatrist/aspiring mercenary Harley Quinn might be able to figure him out, but not me. Anyway, Roman started hunting down Wayne Industries employees who were just trying to earn an honest living. And now that he was the Black Mask, he was not pulling any punches. The way he disposed of these people was absolutely brutal. He exposed them to chemicals that melted off their faces, because just using a traditional weapon would not have been insane enough. Obviously, this didn't sit well with Batman, who confronted Roman, and the two quickly got into a fight. During the battle, Roman's mask was permanently burned into his face, which is pretty much a worst-case scenario. Even if he managed to get the psychiatric help he so clearly needed, there still was the issue of his daddy's coffin would fuse to his bones. That's pretty hard to get past. Ironically enough, his mask became part of his face because of the heat involved in a house fire that occurred during the fight. He was trapped under a piece of wood and was left helpless, much like his parents probably were before they passed away. Unsurprisingly, the skirmish with Batman and the fact that he's stuck wearing a creepy mask didn't improve Roman's disposition or his mental state. He was awful at running the family business, but discovered that he was a whole lot better at running a criminal enterprise. I mean, it's always good to discover your strengths, but this was overall a bummer for the innocent people of Gotham. He forced his henchmen to wear masks as well, and called them the False Facers. But fortunately, it's especially hard to lead a criminal empire in Gotham when Batman's on duty. The more the Dark Knight trimmed down his workforce, the more furious and insane Roman became. If you thought melting people's faces off was nuts, oh boy, that was just the beginning. But even that was nothing compared to what he did to Catwoman when she made the mistake of stealing from his operation. Although you can read Catwoman number 16 if you really have to know. Ugh. After Catwoman discovered what the Black Mask had done to her family, well, you can probably imagine just how happy she was. Everyone in Gotham believed the Black Mask perished at her hand, but it turned out he survived. And after the debacle with Spoiler, he ended up revealing his true identity and becoming the ruler of Gotham's underworld. If only he'd put some of that can-do attitude towards running his family's cosmetics business, maybe none of this would have ever happened. Eventually, Selina Kyle came after him again, and this time he doesn't survive. Or so it seems. Hey, it's a comic book. Other than Uncle Ben, people usually don't stay gone for long. But before long, a new Black Mask appeared on the scene named Jeremiah Arkham, who was once the head of Arkham Asylum. He was eager to make a name for himself and achieve the level of notoriety held by his predecessor. Obviously, this made him a lot of enemies, and chief among them was the Dark Knight himself. Eventually, Jeremiah was captured, unmasked, and imprisoned in Arkham Asylum, and given plenty of time to think about what he did. In the rebooted DCEU, a very much alive Roman Sionis sought help from Jeremiah, hoping that he could be saved from the mask. Oh, and in this version, the mask has mind control abilities, just to make him even scarier. Although he's yet again defeated by Batman, he's still alive, which is more than can be said for many other versions of the character. Ewan McGregory had the honor of being the first live-action version of Roman Sionis. But there was a reference to the character in Gotham. In the episode The Mask, there's a Richard Sionis, who's the head of an investment company with a unique hiring process. He forces his prospective employees to fight lethal battles with office supplies. It's kind of like Fight Club mixed with Office Space. And eventually, Richard ends up offering cash to whoever can bring down Jim Gordon before ultimately deciding to take on the job himself with just a mask and a katana. He ended up in Arkham Asylum, but didn't manage to survive his stay. So by now, you've probably realized that there are some significant differences between the comic book version of Roman Sionis and the one we saw in Birds of Prey. If you're worried about spoilers, you'll want to go ahead and pause this video until you've had a chance to see it. But if not, let's take a closer look at our friend the Black Mask. Both versions of Roman are admittedly quite good at the whole organized crime thing. Although the Huntress spent years training for revenge against the people who destroyed her family, she somehow managed to miss the fact that it was really Roman just taking out his rivals. It's a pretty big oversight, but hey, she's really handy with that bow and arrow thing. Sorry, crossbow. But as far as Roman's backstory, we don't learn very much in Birds of Prey, other than that Roman was always chasing his father's approval, but never managed to get it. The mask isn't fused to his face, and in fact, we barely even see him wearing it in the movie. He might as well have been called Fancy Suit. But to give credit where credit's due, he does seem to be really good at crime, which definitely coincides with his comic book counterpart. You know, like they say, the real terrifying mask is on the inside, nestled in with all the fleshy bits, where nobody can see it. His lackeys don't wear masks either, but no one can fault them for their dedication. Well, except for the Black Canary, who apparently has a soft spot for kids. Or at the very least doesn't want to be an outright villain. Another aspect of his character which definitely carried over to the movie was his love of harming others. Although he's not above his just plain old shooting people, he likes to take his time and make people really suffer. I told you he was crazy. Ewan McGregory described his character as having a very thin skin. He's not a fan of being criticized and tends to lash out when he starts to get his feelings hurt. Since he comes from a rich family, he's been used to people feigning politeness and is willing to take offense for even seemingly minor transgressions. McGregor also added that Roman is an absolute narcissist who has no idea of what life is like for the average citizen of Gotham. Although he's under no delusions that Roman is really just a nice, misunderstood guy, McGregor believes his character comes across as likable and charming. At least until people get to know the real him when the metaphorical mask slips. And when you're going after a career as a villain, being able to charm people is an incredibly valuable skill. It's not exactly flashy, but it's an impressive tool to have in your villain arsenal. And if there's one thing Roman Sionis truly is, it's a villain, regardless of whether he's actually wearing a mask or not. What do you think of this Birds of Prey villain and his fancy suits? Did you enjoy seeing him on the big screen, or should another member of Batman's Rogues Gallery have had the honor? Let us know what you think in the comments, and then click subscribe for more great videos from CBR. Bye for now.